Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches, depending what time you're listening to us. My name is Ariel Jimenez, and we just wanted to take a moment to welcome you to the Healing Generation podcast. I will be your host for today's segment, and we just want to take a moment to welcome all our relations into today's conversation. We want to welcome you, your familia, and all of your ancestors to join us as we dive into what does healing mean to today's generation. Today, we're going to get an opportunity to hear from one of our younger NCN staff about his healing journey, his experiences, and his connection to cultura. So we hope that you enjoy this conversation and that this conversation resonates from our hearts to yours. So today we actually have Adan Perez, who is new to the NCN staff, but has been connected to Círculos ever since he was a teenager. So Adan, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here. Been listening to the podcast, and a lot of my friends do too. So it's kind of an honor to be here and to be a part of the NCN familia. You know, like you said, I've always, since about 18, been walking parallel to NCN and the work that it does, and it's been kind of a guiding light for me in the work that I've done. So it's good to be here, and it's good to be a part of this familia.
No, definitely, and it's an honor for us to have you too. So we're gonna get an opportunity to hear about how you've been walking parallel to us, and then also how you got connected. So let's go ahead and just start with a little conocimiento. Who is Adan, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Adan Perez. I'm the son of Bernardo Trejo Perez and Manuela Saucedo Barraza Perez, que en paz descanse. My mom's from Santiago Papasquiaro, Durango, Mexico, and my dad's from Apipilulco, Guerrero. The son of two hardworking Mexican immigrants who met here in California and built a home here. I'm a recent college graduate from UC Riverside, majored in ethnic studies, specifically Native and Indigenous studies. A proud community college transfer, a danzante, a drummer, and I've recently been actually owning this, but a singer as well, more for ceremonial purposes and like karaoke or anything. Yeah, that's a student of life, definitely, and of these ways, just in the ways that it's helped me and continues to help me. I definitely look to these ways for everything, for guidance.
Well, let me start off by saying congratulations on your graduation, because we know it's not an easy journey, especially for Latinos, Mexicanos, Indigenous folks of all walks of life. So first, congratulations.
I appreciate that, and actually that journey was kind of intense, and because it took 12 years and about one university, two community colleges before I eventually transferred to UC Riverside. And so that it felt like a long time coming, and it felt like almost like a Lord of the Rings style journey just to get there. So, yeah.
Oh man, no, I definitely love that parallel. So let us go a little bit backwards, right? Mm-hmm. Before your journey into community college, before your journey into Riverside, how did you get connected to Círculo? When you were in your teenage years, how was that connection made for you?
So I was doing a summer bridge program it was called the National Hispanic University back in the day in East San Jose, and we were doing a summer bridge program when actually Mario came in with another individual, Salvador Hernandez Chato, and they were talking to us about kind of the concept of palabra, cultura, our ancestors, and those were already things that were resonating with me, and so I really took what they were saying to heart. And Mario specifically was talking about the pride that we should take in our ancestors, the pride in the concept of palabra and our cultura. So from there, it took me a while to actually step into the Joven Noble Círculos, but when I started going, it felt like that was where I was supposed to be the whole time. It felt like it was sort of guiding me in ways that up until that point, I needed that sort of guidance. What I didn't get in my early teen years, and that was because I was 18 when I actually started going to the Joven Noble Círculos. It felt like the guidance that I kind of sort of needed back then, I was kind of starting to get it more now. And I just, felt this sort of internal shift where, like a lot of us when we're teenagers, we kind of feel lost in terms of our identities, especially those of us who are the kids of immigrant parents. Identity
Mm-hmm.
is a big sort of question for us. And when I started going there, I actually started slowly connecting more to my dad and telling him of the concepts of palabra, and because we would drum before, so sometimes before the start of some círculos, so I
Mm-hmm.
would like kind of sing songs at home, and they would kind of resonate with him too. So he would start kicking down knowledge and started creating kind of a bit of a connecting point. So those were the first steps to who I am today, to be honest, and I'm forever grateful that Creator, in a sense, put Mario in my path at that age, and it just started this beautiful journey.
Yeah, no, I could appreciate both of what you mentioned. Mario was one of my earlier teachers también, and even now, I still continue to learn from him. And in that connection to your dad también, I think, when I started bringing some of the culturas back home, it gave him permission for him to open up in different ways that I never thought were possible. Right.
Yeah.
So it allows that connection to build in a different way. You mentioned, cultura and not necessarily being connected, and then the drum, and even in your conocimiento, you said you were a drummer. So what does drumming and singing mean to you in the ceremonial aspect of it?
So for me, drumming is essentially, it's regardless of what part of this side of the world you are, from Alaska to the tip of Chile, it's always been considered that the drum is the heartbeat of our people, regardless of where you go. So to be able to drum, to be able to offer my sort of energy into that, it's in a sense, you know, giving my little grain of sand to keep the heartbeat of our people. And the people who are there, offering danza, or who are there to sing in ceremony with us, it's giving my grain of sand to the heartbeat of healing, of medicine, of música, and singing too. I've always been kind of a timid person, but I I recently started saying this with my friends, but when it comes to singing ceremony songs, like that's where I kind of shine realistically, because for me, all the timidness, all the shyness, all the reservedness that I've ever had, it just goes away, because it's, in a sense, it's my prayer. So it's, why would I dim my prayer for, anyone but myself and Creator? So I'm just able to completely just offer everything that's in the soul. So, those two things, drumming and singing, are actually very, very crucial to who I am today.
Yeah, I know. I know. I'm still timid when it comes to singing también. I only do it in the dark in the sweat lodge when no one else can see me. So I definitely understand that part of it. Now, the cultura aspect of it, I mean, I know you touched on it a little bit.
Mhm.
How was that culture clash and dealing with that coming from the east side to then community college to then Riverside? Can you talk a little bit about that journey? How was the little bit of the culture clash, but also how
Yeah.
was it like connecting to community there, but also just assimilating in general?
So I've definitely taken some time to think about this whole concept of assimilation, and because it is a strange phenomenon here in the U.S., and it is kind of weird
Mm-hmm.
sometimes how we come from these vibrant cultures, and the culture here kind of tells you, oh, seasoning, rhythm, and your music and all that stuff, it's backwards. You should assimilate to here. So like most people, you find yourself conflicted, but the more I learned and the more my dad and I connected, it's, you start seeing what they sort of try to instill in us, in a sense, in the country of, oh, it's keeping a connection to your people, to your ancestors, where it's backwards. It's, no, it's resilience. It's beautiful, because in a sense, wherever you are, Alaska to the tip of Chile, indigenous people, the descendants of indigenous people, they've been fighting for survival. So it's, more than anything, it's honoring them by continuing to study, to learn, to embrace your culture, to embrace ceremonies, and to sing songs. And more than anything, it kind of helped me sort of take pride in who I was, especially in places, like you said, in colleges and academia and stuff. People that look like us are few and far in between,
Mm-hmm.
where we're usually the smallest populations. And so, you know, the whole concept of imposter syndrome comes into play, and wondering, hey, do I belong there? And that was a big question that I asked myself a lot. But in talking to a school therapist who happened to be a brown mujer. She told me, Mijo, you shouldn't be asking yourself if you deserve to be here. You should be asking yourself if this institution deserves to have you here. So that kind of piggybacked everything that, I had learned in the past of, we deserve to be in these spaces just as much as anyone else because our people have fought, our people have struggled, our people have, shed blood, sweat, and tears. And our people are beautiful and deserve to be in any single space where anyone else is, allowed to be at, especially in college. And it was more than anything empowering in a sense that, hey, if I could come from a lineage that survived 500 plus years of genocide, of attempted erasure, then, I deserve to be anywhere and everywhere with the best of them.
I agree 100%. I'm glad that consejera, because sometimes, our counselors love them to death, but sometimes they don't know our realities. Yeah. So when you're able to find someone that's able to walk with you in that journey, it's unique. I know when I was at San Jose State, one of my maestros, Marcos Pizarro, said, even though you might not fit in, doesn't mean you don't belong. And that to me really described what I was going through at that time.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I had the mental capacity, I knew I had the skills, I knew I had everything else, but the people around me didn't look like me. So when he was able to frame it in that sense, it allowed me to be more comfortable and kind of push through and say, no, I need to be here. And also y'all need to listen to me when I speak too. So it gives you a little different perspective. Now you mentioned your degree and what you decided to focus your energy on. Why that emphasis? Why that degree? And what have you gained from it?
So this is where I kind of, I'm a little bit more transparent, and I'm always about transparency. So I snuck into the UC system as a sociology major. Now, when I got there, that's when I realized the UCs, as opposed to like a Cal State school, are more based on research and theory. And coming in as a transfer student, I had worked as a peer mentor at De Anza College. So I was used to doing the work, everything that I was learning, I was used to applying it. Now coming into the UC system where I'm reading about all these other theories, and I'm like, well, when do we actually get to do the work? When do I get to go into community? When do I get to put this into practice? And they're telling me, no, we're just reading charts, we're reading research, we're reading all the fancy jargon. And, it was a little frustrating. So, and especially sociology, where I started seeing the shortcomings of it, where it's like, we'll analyze the problems, but we're not going to dive deep into it. All we're going to do is analyze. And coming in as sort of with an ethnic studies background, and also realizing, hey, I'm towards the tail end of the financial aid that I'm supposed to receive. So I kind of have to go in, hit the ground running, as they say, of all of us transfer students. It's our main sort of mantra that we carry is you have to hit the ground running. So at the end of my first quarter, I ended up switching programs, majors to, I pretty much talked to the counselor and said, hey, what's going to get me out of here the fastest, but what's still with an emphasis on something that I've always been interested in. For me, being that my dad has always been knowledgeable about the people he comes from, the Nahua people in Guerrero. It's something that he sort of, when we started connecting, he started telling me stories and sort of, guiding me in that way. So for me, it kind of hit naturally of, I'm going to emphasize more on sort of indigenous studies, because even as an ethnic studies major in De Anza College, I found out the percentage of native indigenous students at De Anza College, and it was something like 0.50. And because of my size, I would jokingly tell people, congratulations, you now met half of the population of indigenous students. So having that identity and coming in, it's like, and having the connection with the relatives from up here because of ceremony, it's, I may be considered a relative to the South, because of where my dad's people come from, south of the man-made border. But it was still something that was very much a passion of mine, and in this case, it was to uplift the voices of, communities that my family comes from, in sort of like the academic setting here in the north of the man-made border.
Well, I will tell you that I'm a sociology major, so we could have used you on our side, but it's all right. We're still gonna work together.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I know, you talked about your journey, 12-year journey. You talked about your connection to Mario and everything like that. Is there any other people that you want to lift up that were fundamental to supporting you throughout your either healing journey, academic journey, or any other aspect of the roles that you mentioned?
See, hearing that, it's like you open the floodgates because, man, have I got a list for you. And, I was thinking about this particular question before. I kind of figured, it was going to be part of it, but I've always been blessed to have people that I've crossed paths with that have always helped me in some way, shape, or form, or have helped me grow. So my first step into sweat, into ceremony, Maestro Jerry Teo actually happened to be at that first sweat in Gilroy. I want to say around 2010. So having sweat with him, and then things worked in as sort of a domino effect for me. So I came into the Joven Noble Círculo, and then I met Don Roberto Castro, who, was the leader of Calpuli Scali, a danza group in San Jose. So I got invited to go to danza, and I met his whole family, the Castro family, and then also doing ceremony and continuing to to know people like Maestro Jerry Teo, Robert Castro, and even meeting other people like Professor Juan Gamboa, who teaches at San Jose City. I met him at the same time I started doing danza, and I got to both witness his journey as a professor from the first class, one of the first classes he taught, to where he is now, to also being a TA for him during his time at Dianza, and actually from time to time getting to teach courses myself and having him sort of guide me in that way. Because at one point I did want to go into teaching and I did want to be a community college professor. And then from there, meeting other people like Naiche Dominguez and the Dominguez family, Uncle Henry Dominguez, and one of the people who I consider, every time I talk about him, I consider him my mentor, my older brother, but is a danzante that I met through the Castro family. His full Nahuatl name is Nahuicali Tezcacuat Miquisli, or his Spanish regular name is Jesus Martinez, I believe. And this brother, I met him in danza, and sort of after I went my own direction in terms of danza, we had started a community danza circle in San Jose in about 2013, and that circle is still going strong. And I sort of give them some of the biggest credit because, unfortunately, when life brings you challenges, and one of the challenges for me was my mom got cancer in 2015. So I started relying and sort of doubling down on ceremony as a way to not only sort of send prayers to my mom who's dealing with ovarian cancer, but to keep myself in check too, to make sure that, I could be there for my family. I could be there to support my family. And when I got to UC Riverside, some of the greatest friends that I still have today, Brandon Molina Berrios, Anthony Ruiz, Kevin Peña, Lina Tejeda, they were some of the friends that I made at UC Riverside, that especially during the pandemic when we were going through it. There's a short list of the people that I'm closest to at UC Riverside, but they kind of helped keep me in check when the pandemic was going in full swing, and making sure that, hey, is everyone good? Is everyone doing okay in their classes? Like, do we have to do these study sessions to make sure we're all graduating and to keep each other accountable? And the list definitely goes on, but like I said, I've been blessed to, in this journey of healing, of medicine, to life has always sort of put people in my path that have always kind of guided me in steps forward to where eventually I needed to go. Life would show me that, hey, maybe certain things don't work out for a reason because you're meant for these other things. And I've just been incredibly blessed.
And I love that you took it a step further and said, you know what, I'm gonna go there more just than one person.
Yeah.
Because we're connected to a whole community, and a lot of the times we do get limited, right? So thank you. And some of those maestros and maestras too, I've been blessed to have them as part of my journey. So I know the level of impact that they have on a person. You talked about going through college and during the pandemic. How was that? Because you're used to being in person, you're used to connecting the way that we've all been to connect, and then you have to make a big pivot. How was that? Was it easier? Was it harder? How did you survive academics through the pandemic?
So I'll be completely transparent with you, just because one of the brothers that I mentioned, Brandon Molina Berrios, he's doing grad school right now. And we graduated at the same time. But sometimes when we hang out, I'll literally tell him, bro, I don't know how I made it through the pandemic and still engaged in school, because I was an older transfer student, so I had already tried back in De Anza College. I tried taking online classes. I barely, passed with like a D plus or something. So I was by no means an online student. So when we get the email, I want to say late March of 2020, and are told, because of the pandemic, your next quarter and potentially for the foreseeable future is going to be online. It was one of those big, huge, like cartoon gulp moments for me because it's like, damn,
Yeah.
like we're really going to have to put in some work here, especially because I had another full year left in school. So it was like, no, this can't be like the times when I was taking online classes and, failed miserably. It's like I have to put my best foot forward. And, there were definitely challenges. I had some classes where the professors were kind of like, I'm going to upload the entire course on whatever program we were using at the time to sort of, get lectures and turn in homework and stuff. And you could just educate yourselves. And I had other great professors who were very much understanding of, hey, we're in a worldwide pandemic right now, so we understand that academia and academics and homework might take a backseat to other more important things, like the fact that we don't know what the heck is going to go on with coronavirus. And I definitely, like I said earlier, I give all credit to the friends that I made, because we would do, weekly, bi-weekly Zooms check-in sessions, and it'd be like Fridays or Saturdays. It's like, hey, since we all can't go out or anything, like let's hop on Zoom and let's check in and see how everyone's doing. And when platforms like Discord, started becoming more popularized, it was, let's do study sessions on Discord. Let's keep each other accountable, especially those of us who are going to graduate this past year in 2021. It was like, no, we have to make sure we're grinding and, still putting in that work to end on the best note possible. And even though my graduation was through Zoom, and to a certain degree, I have to check myself sometimes, because it's like, oh yeah, I actually did graduate from college, even though, I don't feel like I got the full graduation experience of, that we deserved. But when I did graduate, I still did it my way, in the sense that we had a Zoom graduation, but I invited my family to my dad's house, and I was sitting right there, sort of like, and just that my whole squad was behind me, and so it was like, this was a family effort. So y'all are graduating with me here too. So it was still beautiful, and I still got to do it my way.
Yeah, shout out to my cousin Martin Miranda, who actually graduated from De Anza College middle pandemic, right? And I remember he actually had Professor Gamboa as one of his classes too. But I remember when he graduated, it didn't feel like a graduation. We're all at home, we're on the computer, and his name pops up for like 10 seconds. We clap, and then on to business. So I do feel like, certain people did get robbed of that celebration, because it's a commitment, and not everybody accomplished that commitment. So if we could ever celebrate you, definitely let us know. But I know the pandemic, I'm glad that you're able to build that community and making sure that y'all as a community kept each other accountable. Because I agree, if that would have happened while I was in college, I don't know if I would have been here today. So definitely I acknowledge the struggle. You also mentioned, being part of Hope and Noble, younger. Going back to those days, what did you appreciate most about being in a circle? Or is there something that you appreciated about being connected to circle?
Man, it's the basis for everything for me. And it was, I acknowledge that to a certain degree, as opposed to a good chunk of the youngsters who were there, I wasn't so marked by the life as, some of them were, as I had a choice to be there. I was there every week under my own volition. But just to still witness, because sometimes you did have youngsters from opposing sides, sitting there kind of awkwardly looking at each other like, yo, what's going on? Why is, in this case, a northerner or a southerner sitting across from me? But, then seeing the power of Círculo and the power of the teachings, of the power of humor, especially, because that's one of the things that I remember the most, is Mario and Salvador being very good about throwing in humor in there. And that's, humor is important because it unifies people. It doesn't matter where you're from, what side you are, everyone laughs. And just to have that ability to sort of smile together at the end of, in this case, the 16 weeks, you start seeing young men who at one point kind of were mugging each other from across the room. Now they're shaking hands and, hugging. And, they're willingly, coming, pulling each other in to give each other a hug. That showed me the power of these ways and the power of the círculo. And for me, it's something that I've taken with me everywhere I've gone. And even one of my friend Brandon, when I first met him, we jokingly laugh about this now because he was about 19 when I first met him as a transfer student. And he's coming out of an office, and I see him kind of looking at me, sizing me up. And internally, I'm like, go ahead, youngster, get it out of your system because we're about to become best friends. And, here we are. So just taking that sort of, lighthearted approach, but always approaching every situation and every community with love and intention. They feel it too. And even when I was a pure mentor, it was the lessons of, how you conduct yourself when you're talking to other young men or in other communities. Those are some of the biggest lessons, is always come in a good way. Always sort of speak with your heart, always speak with intention, with your whole self. And, people won't usually be turned off by you coming with your authentic self. If anything, it sort of attracts them and they listen to your message because, unfortunately, there's a lot of people in our society that don't speak from the heart, or they don't speak honestly. Or so when people, real will always recognize real. So those sort of lessons that I learned through Joven Noble of, being my authentic self and just representing who I am, my family, my cultura, my people, that's gone a long way in every space that I've been in, because that's one of the things that people have always sort of told me is when I speak, they can sort of feel who my ancestors are based on how I speak. So those are the biggest sort of takeaways. And, it's an understatement because, if it wasn't for Joven Noble, I recognize this, but I was a very sort of angry youngster back in the day. So those círculos sort of jump started a growth where it's, now that I'm 30, I'm going to turn 31 in about 2 weeks exactly. But realizing now, like, man, I was really angry youngster, and just where I am now, it's like I just, peace and sort of like, what good can I put into the universe? That's sort of my sort of guiding now. It's sort of healing from that angry youngster that I was. The círculo really very much jump started that path of healing.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, because I think it's important for us to connect in that way, because a lot of the times people see an angry youngster and they'll rather lock them up, they'll rather kick them out, and their version of dealing with them is to not deal with them. So I think that definitely humor helps too, because I know if you got someone mugging at you and looking at you up and down, and you're able to connect on that humor level, it breaks barriers también. So there's healing and laughter también. Thinking about where you are at now, right, going full circle, how do you think you're passing on those teachings to the next generation? Or even just speak a little bit about the work that you're doing now, and how proud are you of that work?
So, especially going through community college, being a peer mentor, I was working with some formerly incarcerated young men too. First of all, I was talking to them like they were anyone else, treating them with respect, reminding them, hey, you're important, whatever your past is, that's your past. This is your present right now. You're in school, you're trying to do something better for yourself. Whatever it is, if you're, going for a technical degree, if you're trying to, end up transferring to whatever university you want to go through, I see an honorable person who's trying to make the best out of themselves. So that's the way I would sort of navigate that. And I'm still in contact with some of the young men who I mentored. And one of them, I believe he's about to graduate from UC Santa Cruz this year. So, I'm eternally glad for him. And, some of the other young men are graduating from San Jose State and other schools. And, right now, so the community danza circle that we started in San Jose, I got the blessing to start a community danza circle down here in LA where I'm currently living. And the intention is, like most danza circles, is build community, is if we can build community to the neighborhoods around where we're going to be, it's bring the youngsters, it's show them there's other ways, to represent their people, to represent their culture, aside from, running around the streets, tagging and, doing things that'll just bring a negative sort of light to who they are, instead of, the sacred young men and women that surround us, show them that there's better ways and, better outlets to life. In this case, be it danza, drumming, singing, exploring their roots, exploring their culture. So, that's another thing that's in the works right now, and it's gonna take a little bit of time, but the more I talk about it and strategize it, I'm like, man, this is gonna be a very incredibly beautiful thing, especially because it's gonna reinforce a lot of the other danza circles that exist here, but. The mission and the goal will always be to honor the community and to honor danza itself. And yeah, without the círculos, I don't, this sort of idea, this sort of determination to bring this to the community, I don't think it would be there.
You know what? Well, I do want to commend you because I think what you're mentioning right now. It's not an easy task, and not everybody's up for it, and it takes a lot of work that sometimes goes unthanked. So I just want to commend you for the work that you're gonna be start doing, and then also all of the hours and all of the sweat and all of the teachings that went into in order for you to get that blessing, because they don't just give that blessing to just everybody.
Yeah, no.
So I do want to commend you for that, and also you talked about that next generation, and if you right now as a younger NCN staff, as an older youngster, right? Because we have all different levels of youngsters. We got the early walkers, the 12 and 13 and 14-year-olds that coming in with that energy. Then we got the later youngsters that are still in their 20s, late 20s, early 30s that are still, learning, still doing the work, but are not at the elder role yet, or not at the elder role yet. But what advice, as you as a younger person, would say to that next generation? If you were talking to like a younger you, what advice would you have?
Don't let anyone dim your spirit. Me as a 31-year-old, sometimes, Maestro Jerry talks about, these events of susto that sort of kind of mark us and kind of traumatize us. And I believe psychologically, some people say you sort of stay in those ages sometimes, briefly. It's, don't let anyone dim your spirit, because the second they do that, they kind of, they have some sort of power over you. And, I spend a lot of my life sort of realizing that I dim my spirit for other people. And now at 30, I'm sort of realizing what this whole concept of self-love is. I'm a 30-year-old who barely realized, I didn't love myself for the longest time. So, it kind of goes hand in hand with don't let anyone dim your spirit, but also like learn to love yourself. Because when you have that self-love, it's difficult for people to come and sort of break you down. If you love yourself, you can almost, endure, pretty much anything, It'll get you out of some hairy and sticky situations too, to have that self-love, to have that self-worth. It'll save a lot of, like, sometimes emotional damage and, stuff like that. So definitely now at 30, it's probably the, two of the biggest, advices that I'd give to the youngsters is learn to love yourself, but also don't let anyone dim your spirit, and don't dim your spirit for anyone.
And I think those are two very important things that might be standalone issues, but are interconnected, right? Because sometimes when you don't know how to love yourself, when you don't know what your self-worth is, then you tend to dim your light so that you don't impact those around you. So I think it's important that both of those go hand in hand. So thank you for that. Now, throughout this conversation, we've talked about a lot of different issues. We talked about the man-made border. We talked about self-worth issues, talked about imposter syndrome, a lot of different issues. If you had the mic and the stage, which I want to give shout out to my little brother, Alejandro Osuna, who this is his favorite question. If you had the microphone and the stage and the spotlight, what is one issue you would want to bring light to?
I guess the number one for me right now, and it kind of came to the forefront with losing my mom, is like a whole issue of mental health and sort of normalizing the importance of having a healthy, sort of mental health in general. I fully recognize that there was a shift after my mom passed away, and there's this thing called post-traumatic growth. And it actually happened to me, to where I kicked kind of life into high gear in terms of transferring, but it took a lot for me to actually be able to say, hey, I'm not okay. I'm dealing with this heavy loss, and at the same time, I'm putting in work. I'm mentoring youngsters and stuff, but I was also kind of having those out of body experiences where you don't feel like you're in, the pilot seat. You're kind of running on autopilot. So for me, mental health definitely is one of the biggest things in normalizing, because especially unfortunately in the brown community, it's been normalized when someone's going through it. It's like, it's nothing, walk it off, or go sweep or go clean, like, it's often said as a joke, like, ponte a limpiar entonces, but, mental health is a big issue. And, sometimes, even our parents, like, maybe going through things that go undiagnosed, and, it ends up passing through generations, and, cycles keep going, and people keep, relying on sort of drugs and alcohol as coping mechanisms. Whereas is sort of those of us who are walking these ways, those of us who are kind of more in tune and are doing the work, we recognize that it's okay to not be okay, but it's also okay to get the help, to sort of give yourself a fighting chance in being okay again, or whatever that looks like. So definitely, yeah, the importance of mental health and the acceptance and normalization of getting mental health help. That's one of the biggest things for me.
Thank you for that. Because I think, a lot of us need that reminder that it's okay to not be okay. Because I think, you alluded to this, that a lot of the times in the Latino community, it's taboo to say you need help. I remember one of the first times I told my mom that I wasn't okay and I needed a mental break. The first thing is like, that's loco. Right. And even when I got my sociology degree, my psychology degree, and people ask my mom, oh, what does your son do? ¿Qué hace Ariel? Oh, él trabaja con los locos, con los destrampados. Right. And it's like, there's such a taboo. And right away, you're either okay or you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an in between, and it's okay to not be okay. And sometimes we just need a simple acknowledgement. So definitely that's a big takeaway from me. And I'm still learning what that looks like.
Yeah.
Right. Because it looks different for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But I just want to take a moment to just thank you, man, for everything that you've shared in terms of your journey, your healing journey, your academic journey, your own personal ceremonial journey, because I think those are all different aspects of you. As we start to close up, is there any last remarks, any last teachings, or any last part of your story that you want to share with our listeners?
Actually, I've definitely talked about, because it was a sort of important thing that happened for me, and I said it in this interview, but it was losing my mom. It did jumpstart a lot of sort of changes that I made in my life, and it actually helped me mend the relationship that I had with my dad, because we had kind of a rocky relationship through a good chunk of my adolescence, even to like my early adult years, kind of to the point, I want to say I was like 25, 26 when mom got diagnosed, and that sort of was the moment where it made me reevaluate a lot of things in my life, a lot of the trajectory of where I was going, where my life was heading. And unfortunately, it takes these traumatic sort of moments for us to make certain changes. But, I know where I'm at now, who I am, and the things that I'm doing. I always carry my mom's spirit with me. I would say this a lot in my last year of community college, kind of after my mom passed away, but every step that I took, every word that I spoke, and a lot of the actions that I put out into the world were guided by the love that my mom had for my older brother and I, and the love that I know that she invested in me. And so I'm a product of her love. And my mom's name is, I said earlier, Manuela Salcedo Barraza Perez. And still the work that I do today, me being here in NCN, I would always tell her about the Joven Noble Círculos and stuff. And she was just happy that, where I had started when I started going to the Círculos, and she was seeing sort of like these shifts in me internally, mentally, that I was, coming out of my shell, that I was kind of becoming more of a leader and taking ownership of my life. So, I definitely want to honor her, because the teachings that she left me with in life, the love that she instilled in my older brother and I, and even sort of watching her fight her battle with cancer, it kind of motivated me into a perspective where it's like, in Spanish we say todo tiene solución menos la muerte. Everything has a solution minus death. And in this case, as a joke, taxes. But Um, it's definitely helped me to change, the way I navigate in this world and sort of try and put more balance and love into it. And I always thank my mom for that.
Yeah, and sorry for your loss, but I think one of the things that you mentioned is how do you transform that trauma? Because you were definitely impacted by that loss, but I think what you're impacted more by was that love that she provided.
Yeah.
And I would say personally knowing you, personally being connected with you, that we get a benefit from that love también. So we definitely want to lift her up in a good way, and just as we close up, just thank you for being willing to share of your journey, of all the beauty, all of the cargas, all of the baggage that you might have carried, the transformation, the beautiful lessons of that we got to love ourselves, that it's okay to not be okay, that it's okay to ask for help. And even the most important thing, you shared throughout COVID, that you're able to build community. Regardless of what barriers we might have in front of us, we're still able to build community in different ways. So thank
Definitely.
you for all that you shared. I'm excited to have this conversation with you, and I'm excited for all the people that listen to it and what they might get to it. So for our listeners, thank you for staying connected. Thank you for listening to us. From our house to your house, from our hearts to your hearts, we thank you once again. We tell people to always make sure that you follow us on Facebook as the National Compadres Network, on Instagram as Twitter as La Cultura Cura, and definitely continue to listen to the Healing Generation podcast, because you're going to get to hear a lot of warriors like Adan, like Alejandro, like AB, like Diego, and all of the future young warriors that we have within our communities. So thank you again, and we look forward to continuing to host this conversation. Gracias.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.